infrastructure today rather than a physical place. So to talk about a data center today as what we've traditionally had, which is this very siloed, very centric, scale up organized infrastructure, is not consistent with what we need in today's world, where we're driven by a much more dynamic, much more flexible, much more agile, and a much more dispersed underlying infrastructure driven by things like cloud, software as a service, and now the development of Internet of Things. So to me, the modern data center is a way of running your infrastructure, not necessarily a place. So the traditional data center certainly has a role to play. And in order to ensure that we continue to sustain it, let me take a step back. It has a role to play because at the heart of it, the DNA of a lot of organizations today is based upon the software that they've implemented, their ERP systems, and built up and invested in over many, many years. Those applications today simply cannot be switched off and moved to a new agile third platform technology. So organizations need to be able to sustain that. But in order to sustain it, they've got to take cost out of it, because the lights on, spending 80% of your IT budget on keeping the lights on, limits your ability to embrace the new transformation that digital is driving and building out new applications. So the traditional data center today needs to look at how do we improve the underlying technology platform so we can deliver cloud-like agility at a reduced cost level. And I think with the development of things like all-flash technologies, with the improvements we've seen in performance over time, if you can modernize your infrastructure, you can significantly reduce costs, improve the overall performance, and create a platform for developing that new application. Industry experts, forecasters, tell us that the growth in the requirement to support data explosion is going to grow, and the spend in that's going to grow roughly double GDP as you look at any one country across the globe over the next 4 to 5 years. And so where is that growth growing? Where is that growth taking place? And as we see in Dell Technologies, there's two fundamental parts of that. First of all is your traditional data center. So there are organizations today, whether they're driven by compliance regulations, which means regional authorities' requirements of them, whether they're driven by the true sensitivity of the data that they run, whether they're driven by the response requirements of their organization to access that data, still need the capabilities to run an on-site data center, to run their own data center. What's important to those organizations, though, is that they are able to do so in a modern way. And so supporting them to do that with the new tools and technologies and the software-defined infrastructure is critically important. Enabling you to run those established legacy or heritage, because they've got value to them, applications. We don't see that the spend associated with that is remaining relatively flat year on year. But there's growth. So where is the growth coming from? Because if you look at the rate at which we're now capturing data, and the numbers are completely mind-blowing in terms of how much data we're now capturing, where do you store that? Where do you keep that? So the spend now is going more into the service providers. We see public cloud. There's a lot of talk about the growth of public cloud, and we've seen that. Amazon Web Services, the Azure Google Cloud Platform. But there's also, for example, in Dell Technologies world, we've got over 4,200 cloud service providers that are certified to work with us, and work with VMware in particular, to help support these organizations to capture this data, to compute the data, to store the data, to get the insights and analytics that define their business in a cost-effective and a growth environment. So we see that the whole advent of cloud in multiple forms is where the new spend's driving. So we've talked about public cloud. There's the private cloud providers. There's the software as a service. And then the real growth area, which we're particularly excited about, is the advent of the edge cloud. And what do I mean by the edge cloud? What I mean is the Internet of Things. Because if you looked at it, we used to run a world where we siloed the data into the data center. But that's not where the data is created. Right? That's not where the action takes place. The action takes place out in the real world where the data is captured. So that's the edge. So now with the technology that's developing, the capabilities that we're able to provide, we can enable organizations to effectually capture, analyze, and create insight from the data at the edge, which effectively is just another dynamic of the cloud. So there are multiple operating models today that support that growth. And that growth at the edge is absolutely phenomenal and truly exciting in terms of what it's capable of delivering. Yes, I believe there is, and there's a path to it. And this is part of the journey that we ourselves, if you look at what we've been through as Dell Technologies, when we brought Dell and EMC together, you had two exceptionally large organizations that in their own right ran their own data centers, ran their own infrastructure, ran their own applications, ran their own business processes. And we brought these two together. What we've also been able to do through that process is actually leverage the technologies that we now share with our customers to truly enable our traditional data center to meet the demands of a digital world. And the way that you do this is effectively threefold. You need to modernize the underlying infrastructure. Now, that's an ongoing journey. It's not a matter of rip and replacing. It's how do you look at your existing infrastructure today and the capabilities it delivers. We've just announced, for example, our Unity XT product, which sets a new benchmark in terms of performance in the industry for mid-range storage. Now that you compare that to perhaps a product that we were working with 5 years ago and apply the principles of how much improvement we've been able to drive, not only in the performance metrics of the product, in terms of its massive reduction in power consumption, massive reduction in footprint, it still provides that capability to run on-premise at the data center, but it gives you that flexibility to do it at significantly quicker, reduced cost, more power and space aware, reduced consumption, and at the same time being cloud enabled for cloud tiering, cloud layering, etc. So you can run it in a traditional sense, but from an operational, from an insight, from a performance perspective, it's worlds apart from where we were 5 years ago. So IDC's results are just been announced, and you would have seen our industry has had a phenomenal year last year. I will tell you that we felt that there was a real enthusiasm by organizations to invest in being able to capture data, analyze and grow their business through the use of data, which meant servers and storage and networking infrastructure grew significantly last year. We've seen that slow down a little bit this year. There's been some macro impacts, which we're all aware of, that are impacting growth across the globe. But more importantly, what we're seeing is organizations are now digesting that investment from last year in terms of their infrastructure. We announced our results only last week, and we were flat in our storage, slightly down on our servers. We experienced phenomenal 6% year-on-year growth in our client, which is effectively our corporate workstations, desktops, monitors, product set grew phenomenal growth, 6% year-on-year. What we're seeing though in Asia Pacific, and I think this is the truly exciting thing, is that in fact we're growing faster in APJ than we are across the globe. And you look at the more mature markets, and then you compare to some of the developing markets in this part of the world. And although we don't disclose obviously individual countries, what I can say to you is that we're truly excited by the growth opportunities that emerging markets as they embrace the digital opportunity. And Digital India is a great example. And you see similar examples in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, of countries where the opportunity to truly grow the economy, to create an inclusive society through the use of digital technologies is having a significant impact, and that's creating opportunity for a company like Dell Technologies to work with these leaders. Yeah, look, I will tell you, standing in front of you today, and I say this with complete sincerity, I think India is one of our top priorities. We certainly have a great presence and market relationships that we continue to invest in the very mature markets of Japan, Korea, Singapore, Australia, and even New Zealand. But to truly deliver exponential growth and to truly have an impact on society and the growth of a broader economy, and an economy that's grown over 6% per year, India is exciting. There's a lot of true innovation coming out of India today. The old unicorn startup scene is phenomenally exciting. And we've invested heavily in our capability to support that here in not only in the local market, but also as an organization to support our external markets through the investments we've made in our capabilities here in the Indian marketplace. So we see India as truly exciting. So I think we've matured a lot. When we talked, when we first came together 3 years ago, we talked a lot about the workforce and the infrastructure and security as critical tenets about digital transformation. What we've developed in terms of our thinking and maturity, along with the industry, is the impact of applications. And you would have seen last week we announced our pivotal Kubernetes foundation, now aligned with VMware. It used to be this argument, do you go down a VM path for your applications, or do you go down a Kubernetes container path? What we're finding now is that the answer is yes to both. And us embracing the application side of it, because why is that important? It's important because at the end of the day, there are a number of things that differentiate you in the digital world. It's the personalization of the experience. It's the speed with which you respond. It's the security of the engagement where you protect your customer, you protect the integrity of the relationship. All of that is driven by the application. And for organizations today who truly need to differentiate themselves, they need to create a unique experience, which means they need the ability to create unique applications and not taking months or quarters, 3-monthly periods, to develop a new capability. This is in days, it's in weeks. And that constant learning, that constant innovation. So I think the advancement we've seen, and we're talking a lot about this at the forum today, is about how do you enable a world where you can truly get the most out of your data through smart applications. So, and that's a very good question, and I think that you've struck upon one of the most important drivers of why Dell technologies exist. First of all, let me clearly say, it's important to understand that in VMware, SecureWorks, RSA, Pivotal, there is a need for us to be embracing of the broader market. Right? We recognize that Dell Technologies is not the only solution, and therefore our associated business units need to have the flexibility to work in a broader ecosystem so that we meet the requirements of our customers. And that's critically important to us. But we also recognize, and our customers recognize, that by bringing this together and truly delivering an outcome, we're able to differentiate ourselves significantly in the marketplace. I mean, if you look at our top 30,000 customers have procured more than 4 lines of business from us, and that's growing exponentially quarter on quarter. And the reason they do that is because we're able to make the complicated simple. The ability to bring together the capabilities of the respective strategically aligned business units to deliver an outcome, to deliver a solution to our customers, truly a big differentiation. Whilst at the same time recognizing that each and every customer's requirements are unique and different, and we need to work in that way.